صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الفاتحة.
برخوشنید امام رضا علیہ السلام باوز بلند صلوات. رو کے معصوم آئے کون، رو کے معصوم آئے کون، کم سے دیتی ہے صدا. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا، رو کے معصوم آئے کم سے دیتی ہے صدا. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا. تیرا دیدار نہیں باہی قسمت میں میری، دے ہواؤں کو ذرا حکم ہے میرے علی. سن لو آواز تیری، سن لو آواز تیری، دل بہل جائے میرا. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا. دیکھنے آئی ہوں میں کم سے صورت تیری. اے غریب الغربا دیکھ غربت میری، کوئی بتلاتا نہیں، کوئی بتلاتا نہیں مجھ کو مشہد کا پتہ. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا. جب سے پہنچی ہوں میں کم، دل ہے قابو میں کہاں، غم زدہ نظر شہر کے پیر و جوان، دیکھ کر کالے علم، دیکھ کر کالے علم، دل دہلتا ہے میرا. اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا جس جگہ چھار جس جگہ خار چبے کس جگہ تھک کے گری پوچھو چالوں سے ذرا کیسے میلوں میں چلی زخم پیروں کے تمہیں زخم پیروں کے تمہیں غم سنائیں گے میرا اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا ساتھ جائے گا میرا یہ غم تنہائی تم بھی اکبر کی طرح نہیں لوٹے بائی روز صغرا کی طرح روز صغرا کی طرح میں جلاتی ہوں دیا اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا اے غریب الغربا اے میرے بائی رضا رو کے معصوم کو رو کے معصوم کو سے دیتی ہے صدا اے میرے بائی رضا اے غریب الغربا بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد. Majlis announcements for tonight. Mu'mineen, today's Majlis has been sponsored by Bande Khuda for the Hadiya Majlis of Imam Ali Riza alayhi salam. Next Majlis has been sponsored by Brother Pervez Halani for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Ramzan Ali Bhai Fajr Ali Halani, Maruma Marzia Bhai Badur Ali, Maruma Sitara Zulfikar, Marum Hassan Muhammad Ali Jesa Damani, and Kul Marumins. Today's Majlis has also been sponsored by for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Rashid Punjani, Marum Muhammad Ali Punjani, Maruma Maryam Bhai Punjani, Marum Nur Ali Bhai Punjani, Maruma Sugra Bhai Punjani, Maruma Kulsum Bhai Punjani, Maruma Shirin Bhai Punjani, Maruma Khairun Bhai Punjani, Maruma Nargis Bhai Punjani, Marum Murtaza Ali Pir Muhammad, Marum Ghulam Sen Bhai Pir Muhammad, Marumins of Punjani family, Marumins of Pardan Pir Muhammad family, and Marumins of Kul Marumin. You are humbly requested to recite Surah Fatiha for Kul Marumins. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah.
ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين، سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ملعونين. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziya, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahadat, ulama and siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlulbayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one who's Rahman and one who's Rahim. We've gathered to commemorate the istishhad of Imam Rida salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And inshallah, in this lecture I want to look at a part of a letter that Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam sent towards Abdul Azim Hassani. And within it, it's quite a lengthy letter, but we won't get through the whole letter in this one lecture. But we'll get through as much of it as we can. The Imam is giving a number of advices towards his Shias, because by the time of the 8th Imam, there were significant Shia populations that were starting to grow in various parts of the Islamic empire, especially within Iran, and then with the Imam moving towards Marv, moving towards that area, which current day Turkmenistan, it increased the amount of Shias in the area, that when it reached to the time of the 11th Imam, you have huge populations in those areas, which are now modern day Iran or Turkmenistan, of the Shias of Ahlulbayt. And then the whole system of wukala, of the wakils, of the imams, the representatives that would from each imam pass on the messages to the people, collect their khums and all of those sort of things. But the vast majority of it, the catalyst for it, was the moving of Imam Rida from Medina towards Marv. And the imam, compared to the other imams, had a lot of freedom, because on the zahir of it, he was made the wali ahad, he was made the heir apparent. And so he was given some level of freedom that none of the previous imams or the imams after him had. And so much of the teachings, and this is why the imam, one of the titles that the imam has is Alim Ali Muhammad. He is the Alim of Ali Muhammad, the scholar of Ali Muhammad. That's not to say that the other imams alayhimus salam were not alim or they were not scholars. But it is the fact that Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam had been given an opportunity where he could display this knowledge in an open place, without fear of persecution, without fear of oppression. And so he was given this title of the Alim of Ali Muhammad. And many of the other things that the Imam, the latter Imams, are all known. So from the 9th, 10th, 11th Imam, their alqab, amongst their titles, all of them are referred to as Ibn al-Rida. Even for the 12th Imam as well, some of the narrations refer to him, Arwahun al-Fida, as Ibn al-Rida, because of the amount of opportunity that Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam had in being able to promote the madhab of Ahlulbayt, the teachings of Ahlulbayt alayhi salam. So from amongst one of those teachings is this letter that he writes to Abdul Azim Hassani, asking him to convey a message to his Shias. So the letter begins, Imam says, Ya Abdul Azim, أبلغ عني أولياء السلام, says, the first thing, oh Abdul Azim, convey to our Shias my salam, to our friends. وقل لهم أن لا يجعلوا للشيطان على أنفسهم سبيلا, and tell them that do not allow shaitan a path into them to gain control over them. Now, Thursday we discussed this at length, the various guiles, the various traps and snares of shaitan that he uses in order to misguide a person. Because in the Holy Quran he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm going to misguide them from in front of them, from behind them, from the left of them, to the right of them. And each of those themselves have a different sin that is attached to them, a different tactic that shaitan uses. I'm not going to go over it. We already discussed that on Thursday. Those that are interested can go back to that Thursday lecture. But when shaitan says this, the angels at that time complain or out of shock say, Ya Allah, what will this feeble human being do? That you have given shaitan this power over him, that he can attack him from all four sides. What is he going to do? Allah says, I gave him permission for all four sides, but I left two sides open. Says the one above them and the one below them. Says whenever the human being finds himself in a state of turmoil, being attacked from shaitan from all sides, he has the ability to go towards the ground into sajda, and he'll be closest to me at that point. Or whenever he raises his hands in dua, I will come towards that individual and I will answer whatever that individual wants from me. So dua and sajda. It's interesting, I was thinking earlier, this dua that we recite is recommended for the month of Safar. And I don't know how many of us have actually had a chance to ponder over what it is that we're actually asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Shadeed al-Quwa. We're saying, oh Allah, the one that possesses, the possessor of mighty prowess. Wa Ya Shadeed al-Mihal, the Lord of mighty power. Ya Azizu, Ya Azizu, Ya Aziz. You see, when we use the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this context, where we're calling out a name of Allah, the names of Allah are not like our names. Our names are simply labels that are attached to something. I might be called, Hussein, but for all intents and purposes, I act like Shimmer. Yeah. That name doesn't necessarily need to have it doesn't have an effect on me. It's the label attached to a person. Whereas the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the names of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam and the titles that they have are indicative of a particular characteristic that that individual or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. So when I call out for example, in this dua, or Dua Joshan Kabir, where we have 1,001 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Usually we say 1,000 is 1,001. If you look at one of the parts, I think the 10th part has 11 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So 1,001 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that that's just me saying those names of Allah. No, see, every time I'm saying something like Ya Aziz or Ya Aziz or Ya Aziz, what I'm actually saying is, oh Allah, you are exalted in might, you are Aziz, you are honorable. Also make me Aziz. So when I am saying Ya Aziz, or whenever any of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm reciting in Dua Joshan or any of the other du'as, in reality the name itself is a dua in and of itself. So in Dua Joshan Kabir, it's not that just 100 times you're saying Subhanaka ya la ilaha illa ant, al-ghawth al-ghawth. That's just not the dua in there. Every time you use a name of Allah, there's 1,001 du'as in there. That if we're calling Him Ya Rahman, we're saying, O Rahman, have mercy upon me. O Rahim, have mercy upon me. Make me merciful as well. Make me manifest that name as well. There's multiple layers to reciting the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then after we've exalted Allah, we say, ذَلَّتْ بِعَظَمَتِكَ جَمِيعَ خَلْقِكَ. We say that submissive, everything in existence, you are Aziz. So everything in existence is dhaleel, is humiliated in front of you. Nothing has honor in this world but you and the one that you choose to honor. Everything that does not possess any of that name of Aziz of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is towards dhillah, is towards humiliation. And then we ask for the first zahiri, first dua in there. فَكْفِنِي شَرَّ خَلْقِكَ. So save me from the evil, the shar of your creation. And then we begin to utter the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, Ya Muhsinu, Ya Mujmilu, the one who bestows blessing. When I'm saying the one who bestows blessing, what am I meaning? Bestow blessing on me. Or the one that does good. The one that is Muhsin, do ihsan upon me. By just saying the names, I'm also asking for those names to have an effect upon me. And then also to take root within me, so that I too can manifest those names through my actions. Ya Mun'imu, Ya Mufdil, O the source of all bounties, O the doer of favors. Ya La ilaha illa ant, Subhanaka inni kuntum min al-dhalimin. This is part of that dhikr of Hazrat Yunus. The dhikr that Hazrat Yunus does is in the stomach of the whale, in the darkness of the stomach of the whale. And many of the teachers of akhlaq say the reason for saying this dhikr Yunusiyya, that it's been told to us to recite it often as well. Says Yunus alayhi salam recited it in the darkness of the belly of the whale, where he had no one, surrounded by utter darkness. Says he was in that stomach of that whale, but we find ourselves in the stomach and the darkness of bad friends, in the darkness of our desires that are surrounding us from all four sides, through the darkness, within the darkness of various sins, ghiba, things that we are attached to, the darkness of attachment to this world, that it surrounds us from all four sides, and it won't show us the way out. And so when you're in this darkness, where you're lost and you're drowned in these desires and in these sins and in confusion, says do what Yunus alayhi salam did at that point and recite that dhikr. And when you recite that dhikr, then the light comes. The light is always there. It's just at times we dampen it. So نُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. That we will show to them our signs upon the horizons and within themselves, until they come to the realization that we are truth. The signs, the light is always there. It's just I choose to turn a blind eye to it because the darkness has enveloped me from all four sides. I can't see clearly. But when I recite this dhikr of Hazrat Yunus, and I recite it with concentration, with understanding that my Lord, I am in the dhulmat, the darkness of my sins, my desires, my attachments towards this dunya. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. And so we gave Yunus alayhi salam, hearing his prayer, we saved him from that difficulty. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And this is how Allah deals and saves the believers. In this dua that we're reciting, it's recommended to be recited 10 times after every salah. This is what we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. We have these gems in front of us many a times, but we don't take hold of them. We don't ponder over them. You know, things just become a tradition for us. Well, we have things like Dua Kumail, and it's just a tradition for us. We come, we recite, okay, you've got 10 minutes. Get it over and done with, because we've got to move on to Yasin, which is 7.5 minutes for that, and then move on to the next thing. There's no passion in that worship anymore. There's no want, there's no desire to worship. As we mentioned yesterday, there's that fervor, that passion, that love of worship is no longer there. Because I'm always worried about something within the dunya. Something is always pulling me away. Then I think, oh no, you know what, I better get through this quickly because tomorrow I have work. But if only I realized the fact that I have work is because I do this. And the only reason that work will continue and that life will continue is when I give importance to these things over the dunya. Because decades will go by and eventually one day I'll realize the mortality of my own existence. When I'm young, I feel immortal. I feel like nothing could hurt me and I'll be okay. But as I get older, then my mortality becomes a reality to me. And then at that point, I may not have the strength in my limbs to worship Allah. When I'm young and I'm just looking for an excuse, however quick I can get through this, 10 minutes for Dua Kumail, 7 minutes for Surah Yasin, a minute for this and 2 minutes for that. When I'm young and I'm timing myself and trying to get through all of these tick box exercises as quick as I can, then when I get old, no matter how much I say, قَوَّ عَلَىٰ خِدْمَتِكَ جَوَارِهِ, oh Allah, strengthen my limbs in your worship, it's not going to happen. Because when I had the strength, I chose not to use it in the way of God. إلهي وقد أفنيت عمري في شرة صحو عنك وأبليت شبابي في سقرة التباعد منك. دعاء مناجاة شعبانية. My Lord, وقد أفنيت عمري في شرة صحو عنك. My Lord, I've intoxicated myself in committing the crime of forgetting you. وَأَبْلَيْتُ شَبَابِي فِي سَقْرَةِ التَّبَاعُدِ مِنْكَ. And I have annihilated my youth in committing the crime of staying away from you. When I am young and I have that strength and I don't focus that energy towards Allah, as I get older, no matter how much I ask for that strength to return, I haven't built up the resolve from years. And so now I'm like, when is this going to be over? I have to build up that strength. Ubudiyya is not easy. Ubudiyya is difficult. It is a physical grind. It's not just, oh yeah, I've got to concentrate. No, Ubudiyya, worship, servitude is a physical grind. If I don't have the strength to be able to stand or to even support myself without having a wall to lean against when I'm young, then what hope do I have to sit and, start doing dua in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humbly? I don't even have the core strength to keep my body up. And that's why you see when Layal al-Qadr comes, everyone's like, oh my God. Is it a winter one? They're the worst. Because I have to stay up longer. You ask me to stay up, watch football or boxing or, the play PlayStation, that's not a problem. But when it comes to the worship of Allah, that becomes painful. And ubudiyya is a grind, but one has to learn to push past it. So the first way of fighting shaitan is through the path of dua. Holding on to those, especially those dua that are ma'sura, those that are from Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. Because they will teach you the ways towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ways of ubudiyah, those that have been there from the start of everything. Those that from with them it began. Bina fatah Allah wa bina khatam. The sixth Imam says, with us it began and with us it will end. There is no one better to show you the ways towards Allah than them. So those ziyarat ma'sura, the dua ma'sura, those du'as that are attributed to Ahlul Bayt, those ziyarat that are attributed to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The second way is Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam themselves. Holding on to them, tawassul, istighatha towards the Imam himself, that they will aid you in this path. And now many people, like I said on Thursday, these things, they rear their ugly heads, once every century or so, and then they disappear again. Can't do tawassul, oh, it's against the Quran. Oh, you're doing shirk, you're bringing them on the level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody's bringing Ahlul Bayt to the level of Allah. The system of existence is vertical. Tawheed is always above everything. Everything emanates from Tawheed. But Ahlul Bayt are the perfect path towards Tawheed. There is no other way towards Allah but through Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They are the only path towards Allah. Antumus siratul aqwam. In Ziyarat Jami'ah Kabira we say that you Ahlul Bayt are the true path, the straight path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every other path will not take you towards that reality, towards the truth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only the path of Ali Muhammad that will take you towards Allah. And so holding on to Ahlul Bayt, understanding Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and doing wasila towards and istighatha towards the Ahlul Bayt, that will help you through this darkness. In a Mukashafa, a vision, Sayyid Ali Qadi, he says, I was coming out of the haram of Imam al-Husain alayhi salam, and he says, I saw that there was a darkness that filled the sky from east to west. It was the darkness of misguidance. And he says, and amongst that darkness, says, I saw that there was a door of light. And above that door was written Babur Ridha. And he says, and so I understood through this vision that in Akhirul Zaman, amongst all the difficulties and the darknesses and the trials of the time, it is the door of Imam Rida that will be the safeguard and the sanctuary of the Shias of Ahlul Bayt. Those that want that sanctuary will be at the door of Imam Rida alayhi salam. Holding on to the Aimma alayhimus salam will help us navigate through these difficult times. Imam Rida, one of his titles is Imam al-Ra'uf. Imam al-Jawad, in the Ziyarat Namad that he has for Imam al-Rida, he addresses him, he says, Assalamu ala Imam al-Ra'uf. The Imam that is gentle, that is merciful, that is kind. Ra'uf is more gentler than one that is Rahman. You see, Rahman or Rahim, they do good towards a person. But sometimes the person will need to taste a bit of pain before they achieve the mercy. It's like a doctor injecting someone with a cure for whatever it is. The person needs to go through the pain, however short and slight it is, of the needle piercing the skin before that drug can enter into their body. But ultimately he's doing a mercy to the person. That's Rahim. But Ra'uf bestows the mercy without the pain. And so Imam Rida alayhi salam is referred to as Imam al-Ra'uf. One that bestows, although all of the Imams alayhimus salam, they're all Ra'uf. But there is a reason for why certain Imams are given certain alqab. Yes. So certain Imams are given certain alqab. Why? It's not that only one was Ridha and the other was Jawad and then the other, they were all Ridha, they were all Jawad, they were all Ra'uf, they were all possessors of all of these good qualities. However, it is what they manifest in their time based upon the situation that they faced that particular characteristic came to the fore beyond all of the other characteristics, and thus they were referred to by that. And so Imam al-Ra'uf, Imam al-Rida being Imam al-Ra'uf, he is the path, the Imam that you go to receive that mercy without pain, to receive that love without pain. And he has that khas ra'ufiyat, being gentle, specific, and a general gentleness. A general gentleness that someone like Ma'mun will come to him and say, I can't have any children, the one that is his enemy. And the Imam says to him, Tulidu, they will be born. And the next year he has a son. Or a deer coming and asking for sanctuary with the Imam. That's his general thing. But when it comes to his specific gentleness, which is aimed at his own Shias, then the door is open. Those that go on his ziyarah, those that just remember him. He says, the one that comes on my ziyarah, I will come to do his ziyarah at 3 times. At the time when his scroll of deeds will be being presented to him, I will come to do his ziyarah. At the time when it comes to the scale and his deeds are being weighed up, the one that is my za'ir, I will come and do his ziyarah at that time. وَعِنْدَ الصِّرَاط, and also when it comes to crossing the sirat, 7,000 years long the sirat is, with stages on it. He says, I will come and I will do your ziyarat there. And by ziyarat, what does it mean? That I will grab hold of your hand and take you through these stages. Anyone who does my ziyarat just once. Say, Imam al-Ra'uf, the son of Ayatollah Bahjat Marhum, he narrates a question, he narrates a story. He says that one day, my father, Ayatollah Bahjat, he was visited by an old friend, Ayatollah Fahri. So together they were in Najaf from a very young age. And they'd been friends for about 60 years. For 60 years. So Ayatollah Fahri came to visit Bahjat, and when they were sitting there and they were talking food and tea and whatever, Ayatollah Fahri says to him, Aghay Bahjat, you haven't fulfilled this haqq of friendship over me. I said, because as friends, as believers, our friends have rights over us. So Al-Fahri says to Ayatollah Bahjat, says that you haven't fulfilled the haqq of friendship over that I had over you. Ayatollah Bahjat begins to cry. And Al-Fahri says to him, but now if because you have passed through these levels of irfan and sayr and suluk, and you didn't take me with you on this journey. But he says, but now I'm 80 years old. And if now you try and take me on this journey of sayr and suluk, on this journey of irfan, I don't have the strength in my body to be able to walk in those realms through that level. Remember what I said about ubudiyah being physically taxing on a person. So he says, I don't have the strength anymore to do it. But he says, but today, because I'm your guest, I'm going to ask you a question. And you, as a guest, as your friend and as your guest, I have 2 rights over you. I'm going to ask you a question. And I will not leave until you have answered me. Ayatollah Bahjat says, what is your question? He says, tell me those things that Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam have given you. So what are those khas, specific mercies that Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam have bestowed upon you? Ayatollah Bahijat says to him, there are many things that they have bestowed upon me, but I will tell you just one. Says in one of my ziyarats of Imam Rida, Imam Rida alayhi salam gave me 10 things. I will tell you what one of those things was. Says that one thing was this, that Imam Rida said to me in a mukashifa after that ziyarah, Imam Rida said to me that is it possible that someone seeks refuge in us Ahlulbayt and we don't give him sanctuary? Is it possible that someone seeks refuge in us Ahlulbayt and we do not give him refuge? Says this is one of the secrets that Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam bestowed upon me. No matter how difficult life is, no matter how testing and full of trials your life is, holding on to the door of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. No matter how many sins I've committed, they always look towards a person with love, for they're the manifestation of the mercy of God. No matter how much I've sinned, no matter how bad I am, but if for one moment I turn back towards them, see where they will take you. Karbala is the greatest example of that. Look at Hur. And where was Hur? In the depth of hell. And where did Hur end up? He was from the maqam of being one that we would send la'na on. But now he's at the maqam of one who we would name our children after, who we do tawassul towards. We ask Hur, say, Hur, you ask the Imam for me. But even Hur still had time. He came on the subh of Ashura. Zuhr Ashur. After all the companions had been killed, all of Ahlul Bayt had been killed, two brothers look at each other. Abu al-Hutuf and his brother Sa'd. They look at each other and say, what have we done? What have we done? They turn and they come towards Imam al-Husayn. They say, Ya Husayn, we watched as all your companions were killed. We partook in the battle. We were there when your Abbas was killed. We laughed as your Akbar died. We stood by as your Qasim was trampled. Halli min tawbah. Can our tawbah ever be accepted? Abu Abdullah looks towards them and says, now that you have come to Hussein, all is forgiven. Then don't even dismount from their horses. They say, Ya ibn Rasulillah, then give us permission to go out and fight. Imam says, go. They ride out into the battlefield, fight against that army that they were part of, are killed, were made shaheed. Today when you go to Karbala, their names are inscribed upon the Dharih. The whole life they spent against Ahlul Bayt, because they were part of the Khawarij that broke away from Siffin. They fought against Amir al-Mu'mineen. But right, even at that last moment, when their heart changed and they came towards Imam al-Husayn, Imam al-Husayn grabbed them and took them from the fire to the heights of heaven. So holding on to the coattails of Ali Muhammad. So the first thing Imam Rida advises his Shias is that don't give shaitan a path into yourself. Sometimes he uses the eyes, sometimes he uses the ears, sometimes he uses friends, sometimes he uses the tongue. There are various paths that he uses. A friend that can pull me away from truth. A friend that can inspire me to disrespect other people. A friend that can inspire me to listen to haram, to look at haram. Sometimes he doesn't even need to come to us direct. He uses someone else. He says, stop all of those paths that he uses. Be aware of it. The second thing that Imam says, وَمَرْحُمْ بِالصِّدْقِ فِي الْحَدِيثِ وَأَدَاءِ الْأَمَانَةِ, and tell them to be truthful. When they speak, tell them to speak the truth. وَأَدَاءِ الْأَمَانَةِ, and fulfill their oaths and their covenants. Various things, just speaking truth. No, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, our Shi'as are those who speak the truth even if it is in detriment to them. Al-haqqu murrun. The truth is bitter. The truth is bitter. But one at sometimes has to submit to that truth, has to speak that truth, as painful as it may be. وَأَدَاءِ الْأَمَانَةِ, and fulfill the oaths of covenant. What is the greatest amana that was ever given to the human being? What is the greatest amana that me and you were given? We recite in Ziyarat Amin Allah, Assalamu alayka ya Amin Allahi fi ardih. Says, oh, salams be upon the one that is the amana of Allah upon the earth. And that is the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. How is it that I have maintained that covenant that was given to me, that amana that was given to me? I wasn't just born Shia randomly. I wasn't just born randomly to be a lover of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. These hark back to the time of Alam al-Mithaq, when certain covenants were taken from all of existence. In a hadith, and Alama Majlisi in Bihar has a chapter where it's called Bab Tinati wal Mithaq, the chapter of the covenant, where it talks about Alam al-Mithaq, and where all of existence was asked about the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. It says, those of the plants that accepted entered this world as sweet plants, sweet fruit-bearing plants that you would eat. Those animals that accepted entered this world as halal meat animals. That's what halal for you to consume. Those that rejected the wilaya entered this world as haram meat animals. Those that rejected the wilaya entered as bitter and sour, unedible plants for you. And it says, and then from amongst the human beings, those that in that realm, in Alam al-Mithaq, in that spiritual realm, when they accepted the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they were destined to be born Shia in this world. They were born with the wilaya in their heart. This isn't just random. If it was 2 doors down, I'd be going to Alma Road or somewhere else. It's not just random, this love that you have in your heart for Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This harks back to an existence before here, where you were blessed and bestowed. And that's not to say that you can't fall out of the wilaya. Because an amana is exactly that. Either I can take care of that amana that I have been given, or if I misuse that amana, that can be taken away from me. Same way with the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If I live my life like the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, i.e. I'm rude, I don't fulfill the haqq of other brothers, I don't live the life of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that wilaya will be taken away from me. And I will fall out of the wilaya. And then on the other side, there are those that were born not on the wilaya, but through dua, through istighfar, they find the path of Ahlul Bayt and they enter into the wilaya. It's not random that we just were born. So this is a massive blessing that has been given to us. And at times it seems like a bala has befallen us, that we no longer have that passion and that fervor that we once had. No longer have the passion for the azaa of Imam al-Husayn, to come to the majlis of Imam al-Husayn. We don't have that fervor and that desire to pass on this amana to the future generations. It's just because we looked at it for so many years like culture and tradition. and not as worship, not as spiritual progression, that we reach a state where we're soulless. We reach a state where the Holy Prophet spoke about it. مَسَاجِدُهُمْ مَعْمُورًا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ خَرَابٌ مِّنَ الْهُدَى. That they build beautiful masajid, but their hearts are devoid of any sort of guidance. And you see it all around the world. People are building huge, beautiful masajid. For who? Week in, week out, the crowds dwindle. The average age of the attendees increases. I was just recently in Vancouver, they won't mind me saying this, but they were having a discussion amongst themselves and they were like, oh, you know what, we need to increase the amount of chairs. Because the population of the chair sitters was more. I'm not talking about young people just, want to sit on a chair now, but that they were old and they could no longer sit on the floor. And so this is a real problem that we're facing. That this wilayah, we have not been true to it. And we have not been able to pass it on in an effective way. That love fills the hearts of the future generations. And there is a darkness that will settle and spread if we don't do anything about that. The amana that we have been given, this attraction towards the azan, you see it yourselves. You don't need me to tell you. Why is it dwindling? I'm not talking about the elders. The elders did everything. We're here. I'm talking about our children. See, because what I do is a great one. What I do is like, oh, you know what it is? The kids have got school tomorrow, so I can't bring them to the masjid. They've got exams and things like that. Didn't we have exams? We did all right. Managed to get to the same universities that they're trying to get to. Let's be real. I can't be bothered to come. I'm just blaming the kids for nothing. I can't be bothered to come. And by me, I'm talking like 25 to 45 bracket. Those of us with young children, I can't be bothered myself. I'm just blaming the kids. Oh yeah, they're tired, they can't. 10 years down the line, I will realize I have been to way too many funerals where people have like, oh, how long is it going to take? I've got to get back to work. This is your dad you're burying. Do I have to touch the dead body? Why do I have to shake its shoulder? This is the effect of what happens when we push away from the masjid because of my own selfish desire. I don't want to pass that wilayah onto my children. Oh no, I didn't like it when I was younger. Oh, I just don't even bother entering the masjid. I'm just one of those people that has always stood outside. But that will have an effect. And its effect we are seeing in the akhlaq of the young children. Let's call it out as it is. The akhlaq of our young children is atrocious. The akhlaq that we're seeing in our teenagers is disgusting. Why has that happened? Why is it that this? Because we have not taught that wilayah in an effective way. We haven't transmitted that wilayah. So now, even when they come to the house of God or the house of the Imam, they couldn't give a monkeys about their akhlaq. Because they don't care. Because the house is devoid of any sort of guidance. You can throw them in a masjid, it's not going to guide them. When a house is devoid of anything Islamic and the parents are devoid of any Islamic etiquette, then how do we expect the future generations to maintain that wilayah? مَسَاجِدُهُمْ مَعْمُورًا وَقَلُوبُهُمْ خَرَابٌ مِّنَ الْهُدَى. They will create beautiful masajid, but their hearts will be devoid of any guidance. 3 pieces of advice from the Imam. He says, the Imam continues and then he ends this particular portion. Says if you do all of these things, you He says, and command them to silence, don't talk about too much. Tell them to avoid useless debates and discussions amongst themselves. Tell them to do sila raham, to visit each other in each other's homes, to invite people to their house. He says, if they do this, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ قُرْبَةٌ إِلَيَّ. If they do this, this will bring them close to me. This will bring them close to me. Not my going to ziyarah and touching the dhari. I think about it like this. That's when my ziyarat is accepted. When I can force my way through the crowd and touch the zari. But that qurb is not gained like that. Just because I'm physically near the ma'soom doesn't make me near the ma'soom. You know, I see some people, it's funny actually, it was actually someone from our own community, astaghfirullah. But a couple of years ago in Arba'een, I see someone running and they jump through the crowd and they're punching and they're elbowing and pulling themselves in. And so one of the brothers that was in our group went over and pulled the brother and said, "What are you doing? Like you're pushing people." Yeah, but it was like, these are the Zair of Imam al-Hussein. You know what the reply was? Yeah, but I paid to be here as well, so I should get to touch it. See, when this level, that's how we perceive the sha'a'ir of Ahlulbayt alayhimu salam. That's how we end up. When we belittle, when this is the level of our faith, that it is all related to the iconography and how close I can get towards the grave. But it's not about that. It's when I manifest the particular aspects of the life of the Imam, the teachings of the Imam within my life. That's what brings me close to my Imam. That's what brings tears to my eyes. Otherwise, no matter how difficult the masa'ib is, people just stare at you like you're telling them a story. Because the heart has become hardened. And we've been pushed away from the wilayah. If you hold on to Ahlulbayt alayhimu salam, they will take you towards the heights of existence. They will show you the paths towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they will give you both the dunya and the akhirah. And it's never too late. It's never too late. Karbala is sign, is a living proof of that. But the lives of all the A'imma are there. Whether you are young or you are old, make the intention to change. You hold on to the door of Ali Muhammad and watch how they change your life. Imam Rida alayhi salam is brought from Medina towards Marv 3 years before his death. 3 years before his death, as the Imam is leaving Medina, he gathers all his family around. He says to them, all of you, weep over me, mourn over me. They say, Ya Ibn Rasulillah, nothing has happened to you. Why should we weep over you? Why should we cry over you? He says, no, from this journey I will not return. So Imam, 3 years before his Shahadat, arranges a majlis for his own mourning, so that they could all mourn over him. Here in Medina, Imam Rida is telling all his companions, he's telling all his family members to mourn over him before his death. And in Karbala, Husaini alayhi salam holds his child in his arms. He says, Sakina, don't cry for me. When he wanted to leave, the horse wouldn't move. He said to her, Sakina, don't cry for me. Dismounts from the horse. She cries, says, Father, don't go. He says, don't cry for me, my child, for your time to cry is soon to come. When you will see me lying with the veins of my neck cut on the plains of Karbala. Imam Rida goes towards Marv. Say at one occasion when Da'bil al-Khuzai came and Imam Rida said to him, Da'bil, you've written poetry for my grandfather about Abdullah. And Da'bil said, yes, I have. Ya Ibn Rasulullah, may I recite? And Imam says, yes, recite Da'bil. Da'bil begins to recite the poetry. And it's famous. He talks about Karbala, then he talks about Baghdad, he talks about Jannatul Baqi. When Dabil has finished. Imam Rida says to him, Dabil, add one extra line of poetry to this poem. That will complete it. Dabil was invited to recite in front of all of the family of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, so that they could all mourn for Aba Abdullah. Imam says, add one more line to this Dabil, and then there will be one that will be buried in Tus. Dabil began to recite this line. At that moment, a servant girl comes running. She says, oh Dabil, stop reciting. Dabil says, why? It says, Fatima Ma'sooma has fainted. Hearing of the death of Imam Rida, Fatima Ma'sooma could not bear it. Ya Imam Rida, then how was Zainab still alive on Asr Ashur, as she stood until Zainabiyya, pleading and begging with her brother's killer, saying, Imam, come Muslim, is there not a single Muslim amongst you? Imam Rida reaches Marv, he stays there. That day when Ma'mun calls him to his court, Imam Rida says to Abu Salt, says, Abba Salt, says, I will go. If you see me return from the palace of Ma'mun and my Abba is on my head, know that I have been poisoned. Don't speak to me. Just let me do what I need to do. Abu Hassan says, Imam Rida went towards the palace. Says, I was pacing impatiently outside the house. Says, a short while later, I saw Imam Rida coming. Imam Rida had his Abba upon his head, but Imam Rida was unable to walk. He would walk and sit on the ground. Then he would stand and he would walk and sit again. Multiple times, the distance from the house of Ma'mun to the house of Imam Rida was short, but the Imam sat multiple times on the ground. When he reaches Abba Salt, he says, oh Abba Salt, take me to my room. They say Imam Rida went inside the room. Abba Salt says, I saw Imam Rida pull away the carpet from the ground, and he laid down upon the cool earth. يَتَمَلْمَلُ تَمَلْمُلَ السَّلِيمِ. He says, I saw the Imam writhing on the ground like a man bitten by a venomous snake. You know, all of the poisons of Ali Muhammad, all of the previous Imams, the latter Imams, when they were given poison, the effect of the poison lasted for about 3 days, 4 days before their eventual death. But the poison that Ma'mun gave to Imam Rida was so deadly that he gave it to the Imam at the time of Zuhar. Before the time of Maghrib, Imam Rida had left this world. Abba Salt says, I saw the Imam writhing on the ground in pain. I approached him. I saw he was whispering something. I listened to him. I heard him call out, oh Jawad, oh my Jawad, come to me. Abba Salt says, I came out of the room. I saw a young man standing there. I said, who are you? He says, I've come for my father. Imam al-Jawad went in. Imam Rida passed to him all the secrets of Imamate. Imam Rida left this world. Imam al-Jawad gave him ghusl. He gave him kafan, and he buried him with his own hands. They say the people came out in their thousands in order to bury Imam Rida. And where they placed the body of Imam Rida, they began to throw flowers on the grave of Imam Rida. But Imam Rida himself said to Rayyan ibn Shabib, he said, Yabna Shabib, in kunta bakiyan li shay fabkil al-Husain. Oh son of Shabib, if you want to cry over anything in this world, cry over Husain. Why? فَإِنَّهُ زُبِهَا كَمَا يُزْبَهُ الْكَبْشِ. For he was slaughtered in the way that the sheep are slaughtered. Ya Imam Rida, your Jawad was there to bury you. Your Jawad gave you ghusl. Your Jawad gave you kafan. Your body was in one piece so he could lower you into the grave. grave. But when Sajjad came on the 13th of Muharram, he addressed Bani Asad. He said, Bani Asad, do you have a piece of white cloth? My father's body is in no state for me to lift in one piece. I will lift his body piece by piece onto this cloth and lower him into the grave. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم يا حسين.
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے، ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے پکارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، مجھ بالوں سے پکڑ کر ہے تماچے مارے، مجھ بالوں سے پکڑ کر ہے تماچے مارے، میں نے سرشیم اس مانگا جو، میں نے سرشیم اس مانگا جو تمہارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، وہ جو درا اپنے تحفے میں مجھے بخشے تھے، وہ جو درا اپنے تحفے میں مجھے بخشے تھے، ان کو بے دردی سے ظالم نے، ان کو بے دردی سے ظالم نے اتارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، آپ کے سینے پہ آرام سے سونے والی، آپ کے سینے پہ آرام سے سونے والی، سو کے اب خاکب کرتی ہے، سو کے اب خاکب کرتی ہے گزارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، سات رہباروں کے دوڑایا گیا ہے مجھ کو، سات رہباروں کے دوڑایا گیا ہے مجھ کو، چور زخموں سے بدن میرا، چور زخموں سے بدن میرا ہے سارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، لوک نظام پہ اسے دیکھوں تو دیکھوں کیسے، لوک نظام پہ اسے دیکھوں تو دیکھوں جان سے بھی پیارا بابا جب مجھے ہمارا ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے پکارا بابا جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو سارے عالم کے مدد غار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم میرے مولا علی بن موسیٰ رضا مارے گئے میرے مولا علی بن موسیٰ رضا مارے گئے خون میں ڈوبی ہوئی دستار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو سردار کا ماتم یہ ہے اولاد علی موسیٰ کاظم کا پسر یہ ہے اولاد علی موسیٰ کاظم کا پسر جانشی ہے در کرار کا ماتم کر لو جانشی ہے در کرار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم او مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم اس جنازے پہ کوئی رونے کو بیٹی نہ بہن اس جنازے پہ کوئی رونے کو بیٹی نہ بہن آؤ اس اجری ہوئی سرکار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم پھر سے زہرا کو رلایا ہے بہت ظالم نے پھر سے زہرا کو رلایا ہے بہت ظالم نے ظلم سے برسر پہ کار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو تو اس کے سردار کا ماتم جو کہ شبیر کے غم میں رہا مغموم صدا جو کہ شبیر کے غم मेरा मग़मूम में सदा हाय शब्बीर के गम खार का मातम कर लो हाय शब्बीर के गम खार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तूस के सरदार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तूस के सरदार का ज़ामिने आहू भी है दीन का सुल्तान भी है ज़ामिने आहू भी है दीन का सुल्तान भी है दीन की मूनी सोगम खार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तूस के सरदार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तूस के सरदार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तूस के सरदार का मातम कर लो सारे आलम के मदद गार का मातम कर लो मोमिनो तू से के सरदार या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या सूरतुल मुबारकतुल फातिहा।
السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله يا شفيع الأمة يا رحمة للعالمين. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. السلام عليك يا سيدتي ومولاتي يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا الحسن يا أبا محمد الحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر الأحد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي موسى بن جعفر الكاظم باب الحوائج. السلام عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا غريب الغرباء السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك السبعة وعلى أبنائك الأربعة وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا سيدي ومولاي محمد بن علي التقي الجواد. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي علي بن محمد النقي الحادي. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي حسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أنصارك وعوانك، ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله عجل